Good morning, I'm Rowena Crosby.
And I'm Deborah Renner, and we're your co-hosts for this show. Thank you for joining us for the next 17 minutes for your Invisible Toolbox. The show sponsored by Tero International that focuses on the book Row and I co-authored, and each week we look at a tool for working more effectively with others.
Now, many of our viewers, I know we remember where we were when the Challenger shuttle exploded. That was in 1986. And all 7 astronauts, including what was supposed to be the first school teacher that was supposed to go into space, were killed immediately as the shuttle exploded shortly after takeoff. And while we were all devastated and mourning, a number of people were trying to figure out what happened, and the cause pointed to some faulty O-rings.
Yes, and it was disturbing that there was a tendency at NASA to actually dismiss research that might have pointed to the fact that there was going to be a problem with this O-ring. And instead, NASA fell victim to what we call in research groupthink, and that is where we discourage creativity and actually discourage responsibility for a decision.
And that's really the focus of our show today. We're going to examine the importance of encouraging diversity of thought. Many of us, when we think of diversity, we think about the visible diversity of race and gender and age and physical challenges.
But on today's program, we're going to take a look at what we call invisible diversity, and that is what unfortunately too many organizations suffer from, and that's there's just too much sameness in the organization, and so you don't have diverse thought, diverse problem solving, or diverse approaches.
And we've got loads of resources for you we're going to share on this program to help you avoid this with your teams.
And during our Ask the Expert segment, we're really excited. We're going to host Chuck Current, and he is the Executive Director of the Des Moines Social Club, and they are putting together the diversity between arts and business and social concerns, and it's going to be so exciting to hear about this.
I'm really excited that he's joining us. For our Invisible Tool of the Week, we're going to look at some of the negative effects this can have on your team. And in our development challenge, we're going to explore 3 things you can do to try to improve your team effectiveness.
If you're following along in our book, we're on chapter 23, and it's called Variety is the Spice of Life. And if you don't have your own copy yet, scroll down, click on the link, and get your copy today. Let's get started.
So when you think of a high-functioning team, what do you think of? Many of us think of they share their common goals. They've got a common shared vision. They agree on their values. Mm-hmm. And while that's all true, we sometimes spend less time taking a look at how do the members of the team interact.
We mistakenly think that a team that comes to quick decisions, is in sync, has a common voice, is highly effective.
And what that quick decision making might indicate is a team that is lacking diversity and unwillingness to be able to challenge one another.
Without a diversity of thought, it's uncommon for businesses, it's not uncommon for them to actually lose focus. They can have a resulting lack in innovation and unable to see creative solutions to problems at hand.
Exactly. And you talked earlier in the show, Deb, about this groupthink. That phrase was coined by a Yale University psychologist named Irving Janis, and here's how he defines groupthink. The desire for harmony or conformity in the group that results in an irrational or dysfunctional decision-making outcome.
Which is what really happened with regards to the Challenger and the Space Shuttle, but we could also suggest that the collapse of the
The housing market.
The housing market, the financial market, and the resulting recession in 2008 was the result of people conforming to a pervasive way of thinking, the investors actually.
And that's such a terrific example because there was a lot of really smart, really experienced people who were convinced that the housing market was going to continue to go up despite the fact there was a lot of evidence that said we were ripe for a fall.
So how do we make sure that we do have a diversity of thought in our team or in our organization? Well, CEO Jeff Bezos of Amazon suggests one place we can start is take a look at how we organize our meetings.
And he's a very vocal critic of poorly run meetings. We absolutely love this idea. Hope you'll embrace it. He calls it the 2 pizza rule. So take a look at the number of members of your team, and if it exceeds the number of people that can be comfortably fed with 2 pizzas, you have too many people at the table.
Good thing, good
Yeah,
rule to
it
go
is.
by.
The Forbes Coaches Council, this is a division of Forbes magazine, says that there's actually signs you can look for on your team. So let's take a look at what those are, audit, and see if your team may suffer from some of this.
So here's one of the signs. Is your team just seeking out similar perspectives? It's very comfortable to do that. It makes us feel very validated, but it doesn't lead to diverse thought. We have to be seeking out people that may actually have a different way of thinking than we do.
And take a look at what you're talking about in the meetings. Are you spending more time talking about things you know about, or are you not exploring things that are unknown?
And ask yourself, are you or a member of your team so exuberant about your ideas that you drown out the contributions of other people that may have something important to say?
So if any of those are characteristics of your team, you'll want to stay with us for some ideas on how to improve diversity of thought.
And this leads us to our invisible tool of the week, and it can be found in chapter 23, Variety is the Spice of Life. And our tool for this week is to seek invisible diversity. And you can take a look at this tool on page 56.
So what happens if you do suffer from a little bit of sameness of thought? If you see that happening in the meeting, just stop the meeting, have everyone independently start writing out the pros and cons of whatever's under consideration before you resume the discussion. That can start to get some creative thinking just with the members there.
Yeah, it gives everybody ownership.
Yes.
And if you're the leader of the meeting, you might not share your opinions as the leader. You can influence whether someone who's a little more timid or not sure is going to actually express a dissenting opinion, or maybe they're afraid to put something out there that might be an idea better than yours.
And if your team is large, a lot of teams do tend to be large, consider breaking them into two separate teams with similar agendas. Remember Bezos' two pizza rule. And if two teams tackle the same thing, you may get more involvement than you would on a big team.
Consider smaller pizzas.
Yeah.
Not the large
There
ones.
you go.
And examine all the ideas presented in a really structured manner so that everybody's idea gets to at least be taken a look at. Ask some questions like, how does this idea support our goal? What are the costs? What are the risks?
And this kind of thing will actually shift culture so that employees do feel welcome to bring their best ideas forward.
So let's take a look now at this week's development challenge. We're going to challenge you to do 3 different things to really create a team of diverse thinkers.
Now, the first thing we're going to invite you to do, the next team meeting, hopefully this week, is take a look around the table and see who's present in the meeting. And often they're all specialists from a similar department. Think about, are there people from other departments that we could invite that might have a perspective on the problem but aren't heavily impacted by the decision that's made? They can really bring some different thinking.
It's so important to do that, to get diverse thought and just how things roll out in an organization and other departments.
Exactly.
You can also try to work on your culture of trust and transparency, sometimes just taking people to a different environment for the meeting, and it allows them to talk a little more freely or be more open.
And take a look at how decisions are made on your team. Is the leader making the decision, or is the main voice the specialist in the room? Make sure you're hearing everybody's voice so that you have a good perspective before you come to a decision.
So working on these 3 things this week will help you cultivate that diversity that you have within your team and actually empower each individual in your team.
Well, now it's time to take a look at our top social media posts of the week.
And as those of you who follow Tero know, we post relevant content several times a day on interpersonal skills topics. We're going to feature 2 of this week's posts right now.
We've all been really inspired by the soccer team in Thailand that was rescued from those underground caves. And that brought to recall for a lot of us the miners in Chile in 2010 who were rescued. And so we're going to invite you to take a look at a TED Talk called How to Turn a Group of Strangers into a Team. And in this video, leadership expert Amy Edmondson explains how a team of people was able to facilitate that rescue. You'll find that wonderful video on all Tero social media platforms today.
And our second piece is an article from Inc.com, and it's entitled 3 Ways to Embrace Diversity of Thought in the Workplace. And the author actually talks about ways we can create an environment where people really do feel comfortable sharing their points of view. This is going to be on all Tero social media platforms on Wednesday.
And now it's time for the segment of the program we really love. It's called Ask the Expert, and we're going to welcome to our table Chuck Current. Chuck is the executive director of the Des Moines Social Club, and this is a really innovative arts and entertainment venue that bridges the gap between artists and communities and local businesses. Thank you, Chuck, for joining us. We're
Yes,
delighted to
good
have you
morning.
So
here.
great to have you
Thank you.
here. Before we get started, would you tell our viewers just a little bit about your background and how your organization is attempting to get some innovative ways of making these connections?
Yeah, absolutely. The Des Moines Social Club, our mission boiled down is really using arts and entertainment as a catalyst to bring Des Moines together. And when I talk about Des Moines, I talk about the greater Des Moines. So how do we use that arts and entertainment as a way of bringing different groups that normally wouldn't have an opportunity to interact together?
Oh, wow. It's our understanding that for much of your career, you were in the financial sector. So how do
He's
you
in Des
go
Moines,
from
everybody.
how do you go from being involved with banking to being an advocate for the arts?
Yeah, I think I spent 10 years at Principal and then 10 years at Wells Fargo Home Mortgage. And all during that time, I was involved in different nonprofits. And so on boards and different kind of fundraising opportunities. So always realize the importance of community service. Most recently, when I was in Maquoketa, though, I was involved in something called the Maquoketa Art Experience. And what I realized there is art can be the great equalizer. So no regard if you make $1 bazillion or if you'll make less than that, you can still appreciate art, and it brings people together. Even in that small community of 6,000 people, we would host art receptions. And it was their first opportunity to meet the doctors, the lawyers, the dentists, not as service providers, but as equals appreciating art.
Wow.
And so that lent itself really nicely to what the Des Moines Social Club does.
Oh, wow. Well, since the founding of the Des Moines Social Club, it has been extremely innovative, and some would even say kind of bleeding edge in terms of that. So how were you able to bring together artists and sponsors from the business community that I would suspect they have very different ways of looking at the world?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love your comment around bleeding edge. Sometimes it feels like that a bit. But actually the message is pretty easy when we're talking about many of our business patrons and partners. And it's the same kind of thing that I think Tero is involved in. Everyone is involved in this war on talent. And so how do you make Des Moines sticky? How do you make Des Moines different? And as we bring in more diverse workforce, we need to offer diverse options for entertainment and artists. And so we have a great relationship with many of the organizations that are out there constantly recruiting that talent. We host, for instance, different intern events at the Des Moines Social Club. There's one large medical organization that every time they have a surgical intern, part of their tour is the Des Moines Social Club. With him or her, the surgeon and their trailing spouse. And so it's just a great opportunity to talk about what Des Moines has to offer and how people can get involved.
Wow. Well, how important is it to be inclusive when you're discussing new ideas or maybe problems with your staff and with the greater community?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we did a couple different things talking about diversity and inclusiveness, and it's interesting as that has changed over the years, and you probably have experienced this. I remember when I started at Principal in 1991, it was all about, hey, Rowena's different, and woo, it's diverse, and she's part of our team. And today, really, inclusiveness really is you just want to be able to bring your whole self to work and don't want to be judged. And all of us can
Relate to
appreciate that.
sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So a couple things that we did at the social club when I started about 1.5 years ago is first we changed our hiring process. And so, you know, we were guilty of posting to Indeed.com, and you'd have 120 people look just like me post for the position. Now, it's fabulous. That's a great tool to use. But we needed to slow down the process, and we needed to reach out differently to other audiences to make sure that we were getting diverse candidates. And that's
Fish in
really
a different
important.
pool.
Absolutely. And so how do you communicate differently? We use some of the team member resource groups at Principal and Wells Fargo to reach out to possible candidates. We weren't going to hire anybody away from those organizations, but mom, dad, sister, brother, aunt, uncle, someone that they knew. So that was really important. And our goal, obviously, a lot of organizations have the same, is having a diverse candidate in our finalist pool. And we've been 100% successful in doing that.
Oh, terrific.
The other thing is we diversified our board. So we're, like a lot of boards in Des Moines, pretty Melba toast, white guys, unfortunately. We had good gender balance, but not a lot diverse. And so we actively went after that. And it really changed a lot of our conversations. The third thing that we did was we changed our internship program. So last year we had about 13 interns, 9 of those were unpaid. Well, who can afford an unpaid internship? My daughter had one last year. Well, she's blessed to be in an affluent family and be able to do that.
Right.
But it limits, again, that pool. This year we only had 4 interns and all of them were paid. So a much more diverse opportunity. And so that's how we changed our organization in making sure we were being more inclusive, in addition to a lot of programming things.
What do you think?
Lots of changes. Why do you think it's so difficult for people to consider different perspectives or viewpoints?
We talked a little bit earlier. I think people just naturally armor up, right? They, I've got my opinions and I'm not going to listen. And so I, armor up in preparation for that. And I'm thinking about how I'm going to respond instead of thinking about really what you're saying and being involved in that. And we're all guilty of that. And that's one of the things I think art can provide an opportunity for people to engage in an idea, let their armor down, and learn something through that process.
Absolutely. Well,
Awesome.
what's been your greatest challenge since you've been at the Des Moines Social Club?
I think it's the breadth of the job. I've been and I've talked about very large organizations with divisions that I ran with thousands of people, and small, but this is small. So, it's everything from having great discussions with a patron around a $100,000 gift to the plumbing is broken. Because we don't have a facilities department that you call and say, hey, or we don't have an IT department that, my computer's not working.
Right.
So that just the brevity of the job is challenging. But our staff has been great, and we've gone through a lot of changes like the ones that I just talked about. So we're at a very exciting point with where the Des Moines Social Club is, and we're excited about where we're going.
Wow, we're excited as well. Thank you so much for the
What
work
a
that
jewel
you've
in our
done.
community. Thank you for
Thank
joining us
you.
today.
Thank
What
you
a
so much.
terrific story. Well, thanks to all of you for joining us. If you missed any portion of the program, or if you'd like to share it with others, you'll find it on Tero's YouTube channel. Join us again next Monday morning at 9:03 Central Time, where we'll look at another tool in your Invisible Toolbox.
And now it's your turn. We welcome your feedback and suggestions for future shows. You can email your ideas to ideas@yourinvisiblettoolbox.com. And if you haven't found us out there on your favorite social media platform, please do. And subscribe to Tero's YouTube channel. You will be alerted to when future shows are going to air. Thank you to Kyle Plummer, our director, and Rachel Trainham, our camera person today, and to Chuck for joining us.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you. And that's a wrap.